Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. We get to talk about something that you and I were actually talking about on the phone when I was driving over here, and I feel like we have unfinished business with this conversation. So I wanted to bring it back up and talk about it live.
Which is what I love, that you've got some fodder for this, because it was a question that I asked you that happened today. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm defeated. I don't even know what to do with this. And you're like, oh, I've got a lot of thoughts. And I was like, oh, thank God somebody has thoughts on this and can walk me through this, because I just was like, so yes. Do you want me to go ahead and...
Yeah, so you lay the groundwork, and then I think we need to start... You lay the groundwork, let's talk about what we've already said, and then I feel like we can continue the conversation.
Thank you. I find that would be most useful for myself, if not anybody else. I'm sure listeners could benefit too, but I know I need this information. So thank you for letting me,
this is real life. This is literally today.
This happened today. So, last week I went on vacation with my family, and I know I've talked about before, Scheduling Institute, trainings and stuff like that, and I love a lot of what they do. So anyway, I've been a client off and on, just depending on what's going on in the office. And so they had their big, I don't even remember what they call it, practice summit, growth summit, whatever. They had something, and it was just like, I think in the years past, they did this thing called Culture Fest. And they pull out all stops for this. Like, it's this mega event. So this one, they've been advertising all year, and Deion Sanders was going to be there, and Tim Tebow was going to speak, and Dr. Stork, is that his name? From the doctors, Travis Stork, I think. So he was going to speak, and Dr. blah, 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 who invented the blah, 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 was going to be there, right? Like, so it's this all-star lineup for a dental conference. And anyway, so I had wanted to go, and then I was like, it was too expensive, blah, 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 dwindled down to like the last couple of weeks. And my guess is they probably didn't sell as many tickets as they wanted to, or they wanted a fuller house, or who knows what. But they were like, hey, but they always do this, and it always works on me.
They must know how to sell.
They must know. But it's like, oh, limited capacity. And, if you are one of the blah, blah, blah number to sign up, then you get up. Bottom line, like, it was actually a very good deal. Like, if I'd bought the tickets months ago, I would have spent a lot more. And in this case, whatever deal they had, I called you and I was like, dude, what do you think about this? So I ended up like, basically it was like hotel stay, or no, they even threw in a hotel. Mm-hmm. So we got the hotel covered, and then I think I bought their tickets on miles, and the conference itself was, very reasonable for Scheduling Institute, a couple of thousand, like, but for them, for these big names, it was like, wow, that is really affordable. Anywho, because I was going to be out anyway, the schedule wasn't filled to max capacity. And I thought, I'm going to send these my two hygienists, who are kind of become, they're kind of team leads and rah and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to send you two if y'all want to go. And they agreed. So they came back the other day. They must have flown back Friday, I guess. So today's the first day that we met in the office, and they were very excited to tell me what all they learned about and what they thought of the conference, and they thought it was great. And but so the one hygienist cornered me in the morning and just kind of, gave me some info about it. Great. Well, then the two of them, hey, can we tell you more about this? I'm like, okay. So they both like come binders in hand and kind of barricade me in my office. And they're like, well, we really enjoyed the class and blah, blah, blah. But one of the biggest things that they talked about, I could just tell by the tone in their voice. And I'm like, I'm typing, by the way. And as they're talking and I'm listening to the tone of their voice, I kind of stopped typing because I'm like, they're about to hit me with something. What are you about to hit me with? And they're like, well, they pointed out that usually the biggest roadblock to growth in a practice is the owner. It's the boss, the dentist, who's the biggest roadblock. And I was like, oh, really? Is that what they said? And they're like, yeah, because the owner is always averse to change, and the owner makes a bunch of excuses about investing and about holding people accountable. And so it's usually the leader, the boss, who is the roadblock to practice growth. And I said, okay, I'll own that. Fine. So what do I need to be doing different? Like, did you get any, pearls of wisdom
for
here?
you for responding that way. I think that was...
Well, and sarcasm aside, I was like, okay, I mean, like, I'll own that. Like, I sent you to this conference. If I'm the roadblock, I need to know that. So what am I blocking the road for? Because I'm unaware. So I'm glad that they felt comfortable enough to come tell me, although it took the two of them to...
Team up.
Yeah, not one would come by herself. So they ganged up on me and they said, it's you. I said, okay, well, give me an example. Like, what am I being a roadblock to? Because I do want efficiency. I don't want to be the roadblock. So yes, tell me what else we need here. And basically they were like, well, you make a lot of excuses for our team members who are underperformers. And, you don't want to fire anybody, but then the impact it makes on overhead to have 5 people do the job of one person and not even get it done right. Like, we don't understand why you just don't let these people go. And I kind of paused. I was like, okay, so that's what I'm the roadblock to. And again, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a feeler. So my first reaction was, well, crap. I'm a ineffective leader. Drat. I try so hard and like clearly I am not good at this. So that was my first reaction, was like, I'm the roadblock. I should have known it, right? Like, that's my first thing. It's like, I'm a people pleaser. Of course it's me who's preventing this practice from growing. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to be present more, no more family vacations. I need to work on weekends. Like, I'm preventing the growth here. And then I paused for a minute and I was like, okay, well, where's this coming from, whatever. And then I paused another moment and I went, you know what? I think I mentioned back in May, I got invited to speak at a laser conference in Athens. And, I took a couple of the team members. Well, these 2 hygienists were were 2 of the people. And I took an assistant with me. And I remember the one night we were all like having a good time in the rooftop patio. I will leave it at that. What happens in Athens stays in Athens. But let's just say we were having a good time and people felt very comfortable and relaxed by that point in the evening to share their thoughts of, and I was like, I've heard this before. It was the same ones of you telling me that I was, that I guess that day that I went to conference, they all went on a catamaran tour of the Mediterranean and islands and whatever. And I guess that's what they talked about without the cat present. The little mice were gabbing about how the cat is like messing this up and doesn't pay attention to that and is too soft and is too this and that. And so I'd already heard it. So I think that's why for me, again, today I was like, oh, y'all still on that shit? Like, okay, what do you, like, who is it that you want to fire? It's these 3 people, those are who y'all were gossiping about last time. Those are the 3. So let's tackle each one by one. I know y'all think I'm too soft, but let me just explain my viewpoint and then y'all tell me, what do I do with that? And do I agree with them that some of the staff is annoying as bleep? Yes, I do. Like, but frankly, everybody annoys me at some point, right? Like, when you're the boss, somebody's going to get on your nerves at any given moment. So my point is, nobody's perfect. Yeah. So as much as I get on y'all's nerves, y'all get on my nerves, and we all, like, that's part of being a family, part of being a work environment. So I think, though, in the moment, I was just like, okay, well, it took me a minute to kind of calm myself as I'm listening to them. Not calm. It's not like I was upset, but I think I was disappointed at myself in the moment, going, shoot, I've, like, messed this up. They're disappointed in me. All weekend they probably talked about what a terrible leader I am. And
on your dime.
On my dime, yeah. Yeah, thank you. On my dime, completely. And so, do you see the big C carved into my forehead? Chump, right here. But I thought, I kind of thought for a minute, I went, wait a minute, I have advisors all around me. Certainly Bethany would have told me if I was an idiot by now. Kindly, gently, in the kind way you do, but you would have not let me be an idiot for far too long. And especially when you also, like, we just had the episode about what was our last episode about last week was the backups.
Yes.
Backups. Thank you. Sorry about that. So we were talking about backups and how you typically are like, don't be overstaffed because that's an overhead impact, but yet the balance of still have enough that you're not high and dry. And so I'm like, you and I have always had that conversation and discussion. And dare I say, over the last 6 to 8 months, there have been multiple people that I've been like, can I fire them now? And you've been like, no. And I'm like, really? Okay. Because you've always been like, this.
Yeah.
Lean, run lean. And of course, knowing my rationale for letting them go was because they were on my nerves. Like, so I was just like, I'll let them go. They're bugging me right now. All of that to say, as these two are talking to me about what a softie I am and how I'm ineffectively managing the team and costing them the overhead, you see, because I'm employing all these people who are only half-assing their jobs, and therefore our collections is low, our overall
overhead or our net profitability
is lower, which impacts their bonuses. And why do I tolerate these weak links, and shouldn't we get rid of the weak links, is basically what they were trying to tell me. So I went, okay, well, so again, I just calmed myself from going, you're not an idiot. I mean, you are, but you're not an idiot in this sense. Like, and you've got Bethany telling you that you're in an okay place. So thank goodness we had those conversations multiple times over the last couple of weeks to months. But then I kind of went, okay, but what is your solution? And so this is where, for me, I kind of listened to what they had to say and I kind of bantered back and forth. But I'm going to stop talking now because for you then, I called you and I was like, Bethany, this is what happened to me today. I got ambushed, and can you talk to them? Because I think coming from me, they're not listening to me because I think I'm the softie who's letting them fail. And I'm the roadblock because this conference that I just paid for told them that I'm the roadblock and I'm the problem, which I'm sure in some ways I am. But I think you brought out a lot of other perspectives that are important to keep it all in balance, I guess. And fair enough that as two hygienists, yes, they're providers in the practice, they're leaders in the practice, but they do not own the practice. And so things that they may not be seeing, and then any other pearls you've got along the way. I don't know if anybody else has dealt with this yet or not.
I think it's the very common.
Was the overlying theme here too, it almost goes back to hiring and firing. Like, do you really need all these people on your team? Are they giving you the results you need? Are they standing in your way from reaching your goals? Although, dare I say, I believe we're still in the time of, this is who we've got. Mm-hmm. Like, the job market's still not much better that we swap these out. And that is one thing I brought up today. All the while tippy-toeing that line, I never like to let them know that the job market or the pool of candidates is crumbs right now. Because then I'm like, well, then they could turn on and be like, oh, you really need me. This is where I need a raise. So I've always towed that line very carefully going, if we let so-and-so go, I'll just hire another one. But in the back of my head, I'm like, hire which one? Where's this person going to come from, right? So anyway, as you can tell, my brain is all over the place. Like, it just, I wasn't sure how to proceed. And so you had some great thoughts, and I will let you be the expert. I've dumped the problems. Solve them.
And so fresh, such fresh problems. So my immediate reaction when you were telling me about this conversation, and we kind of jawed at it as we were talking, but I'm like, thank you, seminar speakers, for dumping the responsibility for any practice failure on the practice owner. I'm like, thanks, that's really kind. And your hygienist just bought it hook, line, and sinker. But I do think there is perspective here that we really need to talk about, because this is actually very common. Not that a team member would come and be like, hey, doc, the reason this practice isn't thriving is because of you. I would say that's rare. But the freedom to come to the doctor and explain about a failing team member is very common. I think the doctor is often privy to certain people's perspectives on who's successful and who's not. And I think we've got to be really careful as the doctor or the practice owner in that situation to just buy that and go, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about Sally. Tell me more. You think she's failing because of what? She messed up what? oh no. And then we're like, all of a sudden Sally's on the chopping block, and she wasn't even on the chopping block before, but this person had such a compelling reason that Sally should be on the chopping block that we kind of just start going that direction. And it can taint our lens through which we look.
And I've done that multiple times over the years, always to my own detriment, and gone back and gone, fool, why did you listen to the perspective of one or two people that, let's say they're not trying to be malicious. They're not, they're just frustrated because their job is harder because Sally's not doing her job effectively. I can see how you would think that, but you're only viewing it from that one lens. And then fool me comes along and is just like, I hear it, they vent it all to me, and now I'm like, Sally, you were under my radar. Now I'm going to be watching you. And I've done that before, and it's a stupid thing to do.
And Sally's like, what did I do? I don't know. Yeah. She hates me now, Yeah. It really is. And that happens, I would say, chronically, that the doctor is hit with some kind of underperformance about somebody else. And sometimes it is malicious. I'll be honest. Sometimes it is, I don't like this person, I'm going to get her out. And I've got a path to the doctor that is safe for me. So sometimes it is. I don't know that it's always malicious. I think with the hygienist, I don't think they were like, great, this is our chance to get these 3 people fired. Maybe it was. Maybe that's their goal, is that ultimately you'll turn around and fire these people. But perspective is the key word that I want us to think about here. That person who's coming to you, the doctor, these 2 hygienists that came to you, they have a very limited perspective. In fact, one of the things that I said, one of the people that they were talking about, I said, they haven't walked a day in that person's shoes. They're looking at it from their vantage point and they can see failures. But what they haven't done is ever walked in that person's shoes for a day, for a week. I don't care for how long.
So you're talking about like the hygienist, but yes, she may have run up to the front to answer a phone once or twice. She may have scheduled a patient once or twice, but she's never sat in that checkout seat for a couple of days at a time to see what all that person deals with or what the check-in person does.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's perspective that's important for the practice owner, the doctor, and I think you did this today with your hygienist, to point back to them, to go, I get it. These things are frustrating, and absolutely, we need to work on them. Let's figure out a plan for how to work on work with Sally on that. But you're seeing it from a particular lens. So yes, you're seeing the weaknesses, and maybe you're predisposed to see the weaknesses and the mistakes, which both of them are. They are naturally inclined to pick up on the mistakes because they're perfectionists, they're task-oriented go-getters, and so it comes easy to them. They can easily get the job done. Maybe not without mistake, but pretty darn near close to without any mistakes. So then they look to somebody else and they're like, I don't understand. Like this idiot keeps making the same mistake. And instead of them choosing to see what's right about that person, they are naturally inclined, predisposed to see the mistakes in that person. And so I think the coaching for somebody who's coming to complain is first and foremost, okay, but what is the good that you're not taking into account right now? Like, I know we're talking about the bad, and that is relevant. But you, the practice owner, which is what you talked about with them today, like, you have to see it from multiple angles. Yes, you have to account for the mistakes, but you also have to go, what do they bring to the table?
And that's what I struggled with today, because they've already pegged me as you're the softie. And in their words, you make excuses for them. So if I had done that today, where I was like, but you're not seeing the good and you're not seeing this, then they would have gone, oh, there she goes again, roadblock. And so all I could answer to that was, okay, well, what you're asking for then is just a reminder. If these people leave, if we fire them, the assumption needs to be there's no replacement for them. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you want, because you're saying that 5 aren't doing it, cut 2, leave us 3, the 3 should be able to handle the job of 5. Okay. And in my opinion, I'm like, all 5 are equally helpful and equally useless. Like, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So I'm irritated by all 5. So should I just fire them all? Have no assistants in this practice? So I kind of found it interesting that it's the 2 people that irritate them the most. But I'm like, okay, but the other 3 still make an abundance of mistakes.
They just irritate them less.
They're more likable people. And so part of me went, okay, if the two irritating ones are gone, one of these is going to start irritating you because they're not any better. So that's issue number one. But I said, okay, so let's assume we're not replacing them. Yeah, I think we'd be just fine. Would we? So I had to kind of talk them through that a little bit. And so in our particular case, one of the hygienists is part-time. Her husband's a firefighter. We work a lot with her schedule. And I was like, okay, well, what about the mornings you have to come in later because he's not home till later? Right now, these other assistants can at least get the ball rolling.
They fill in the gap for your absence.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're not seeing that when you're out of the office. You don't see that they stand in the gap for you, but they do.
Well, but then I'm like, but what about the other hygienist? Are you missing it too?
Yeah.
Are you missing it? That these are teeing the patients up for you. So if we lose these two, this one's an op with me. This one's with the baby column. And you've got nobody, honey. You've got the one, which means we see fewer patients. Mm-hmm. How did that help your overhead?
I was about to say, then that reduces net profitability because we can't have as much volume on the clinic floor.
So that's what I responded with because I knew if I said, well, what is the good this person do and what is that? Because I've tried to do that before. I think I tried to do that in Athens. And of course, maybe I wasn't as effective and there could be other reasons I wasn't effective that particular evening.
I say the fact that you remember the conversation is
I remember
impressive.
A lot of the conversation. At least my perspective of what I think I said and was said. Who will really know? But we don't need to relive that again. Let's move forward here. So, but in the end, then it's, again, they've dinged me as ineffective at seeing what's right there under my nose, and they're going to bring it to my attention. And, part of it though, too, I do go back and say, but y'all are in a position to see things that I don't see. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I can't completely discount what you're saying.
Exactly.
And that's where I just called you and I was like, I'm just stuck because when they point out that, say, front desk didn't do XYZ and the assistants didn't do ABC, and then I take it to the assistants and I'm like, hey, why didn't this happen? Why didn't this happen? And, 99% of the time, what they're telling me makes perfect sense. And same with the front. And so then I'm stuck going, are you two being far too critical of this group here? Or do you guys have excuses and answers for everything, but yet, or you're not either willing to admit or your ceiling's not high enough to realize the foolery? And so I'm literally just stuck. And so I don't want to feel like I'm not listening to them. So I just punted to you. I was like, will you please talk to them? And so anyway, I know I keep saying, I'm going to let you keep talking about imparting wisdom and what else.
A couple things. First of all, take into account that person's perspective. And I don't think I think you're right. In this conversation, that was not the time and place because that's what you were being accused of, is that you see the alternate perspective too often. But I think as a practice owner or doctor that maybe is experiencing this for the first time and doesn't know how to deal with it, take it with a grain of salt because it could be malicious. It could be that they're not seeing the whole of that person. Even as we're talking, one of the hygienists that came to you with some critiques, she has openly critiqued your treatment coordinator, the lady that sits in on a lot of the conversations and has a lot of the difficult financial conversations and all of that. But you and I have talked about that hygienist multiple times, and we would not put her in on a treatment conversation or consultation. So to me, it's unfair for that hygienist to be able to critique somebody that we can't even put her into that role. So I think we have to really challenge our team members to go, I appreciate the criticism. First of all, why don't you take some time to look for what's right about that person? But second of all, if you really want to critique, then walk in her shoes. And hey, we'll schedule some extra days for you. In addition to your hygiene days, we'll schedule some extra days for you where you can act as treatment coordinator and then come back to us with some critiques. Because maybe, just maybe, that perspective is going to help you to understand the challenges that this person is facing that you didn't have an appreciation for because you've never sat in that chair. So then we have to challenge our team on that perspective. But I think the other thing that's really important here, as the practice owner, you have to think about things more globally. So I kind of equate a lot of times, parenting to being a practice owner. I think there's a lot of similarities that we can draw. Now, thankfully, kids aren't fireable. We're not going to fire a kid from our family as much as we sometimes may want to. But if I've got one of my children that's complaining about the other, let's say Cosette, my oldest, complaining about her brother right next to her, Kello. Kello's always mean to me. Kello always says mean things to me, blah, 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 blah. Do I see some of what she's talking about? Absolutely. He bites her head off, at a pretty consistent basis. So I can understand where she's coming from. But also, I see him come up and give her a big bear hug. I see him grab his sister a cup of water because he thinks she's thirsty. I'm seeing, yes, I understand the negative that you've pointed out, but what you're choosing not to see is all these little tokens of love that he does for you. And you need to think about that. So, am I going to fire Kal-El from the family because you don't like him right now? No. He has a place. He serves a purpose. And I think when we had this conversation just now over the phone, you and I have dialogued ad nauseum about each person on the team. I feel like a good bulk of our conversation is, well, let's put somebody up on the chopping block and let's see, do they make it or do they not? And if we feel like they need to be chopped, is there anything possible that we can do to train, coach, teach that person to make them valuable? But also, we adjust our expectations. So, oh wow, we brought this person in thinking she would be this. I don't think she's going to be that. So how can we adjust our expectations? Because she does have some value that she brings to the team. So how can we tweak our expectations of this person and put her in a role where she can be more successful? And is it the role we had intended her for? No, but it's still valuable. It's valuable enough to keep her on the team and to not have the risk of bringing somebody new on the team to replace her. So
that you can't find. That person that you can't find to replace her with. Yeah.
What person? So I think you and I dialogue about that so much, and we're critically thinking about that all the time. Unfortunately, what has come across to your hygienist is that's just you defending them. But what they don't understand is you've thought about it collectively. This is not an individual, you're right, that treatment coordinator, she just needs to go. No, that treatment coordinator leaving causes a domino effect of things happening. And you're thinking, can we absorb the dominoes? Like, it goes back to the backup plan last week. You're absolutely right. It all ties together. That decision to axe somebody because the hygienist thinks they need to be axed and you're the roadblock, woman up and fire that person. That's a complicated decision. That's not just one person that's impacted. That's an entire team and potentially a practice schedule and a practice productivity that is impacted because you didn't like somebody enough and put enough pressure that we now axe that person.
And in this case, it's not that they don't like her. They just don't like, or any of these three, one of them they don't like so much. But the other three, they don't like because they're constantly making mistakes. And the common sense really isn't and the two hygienists have a lot of common sense. So it's really difficult then when they're like, I can do this, why can't you do it? Well, of course you should be filling the schedule. Well, of course you should be answering these emails. Well, of course, but I'm like, but you're not there.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there are better ways to do it. But in the end, were they just sitting there picking their nose? No, they were trying to do something. And so until they're like costly to the practice, they filed the wrong insurance and now we did, $2,000 work for free. And that's happened 4 times now, like something like that. But I think, yes, their mistakes are really irritating because it's stuff I said to you today. I was like, am I just being a bee? But I feel like I could put my 11-year-old up there to get this information and she could do it right. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. So that's me being snarly, snippy, catty, rude. But yes, there are plenty of mistakes that should not be happening. They've had plenty of training. They've had plenty. So I don't know what else to do about it. But exactly your point. Fine. You get rid of that person. Have you realized that then we've got nobody to man this column? We're going to be shorthanded here. And then now this person's going to have to pick up that, which means you're going to have to pick up this. So did you want 25% help? Like, let's assume these people are really, only 25% effective. That's still only 75% you've got to do. Would you rather do 100?
Right.
And so, anyway.
I think, but that's exactly the conversation. I think your team members are not going to, in my mind, are not going to ever see it from a global perspective. I think even some of the best office managers that I've worked with, there's a couple that can kind of see the picture globally, and not only just now, the impact that it would have now, but they can look forward and go, but then what's the subsequent ripple effect from this decision? I think even your brightest people on the team aren't going to think that way. And so,
and to be fair to them, why would they?
Why would they?
They've not been in that situation or experienced that. And I think newer docs, you're kind of going, what do you mean? But those of us that have been around for a while and have seen that ripple effect are going, I don't want to create that.
Right.
Or
I want to get a plan in place before I create that. I don't want to be reactive to this decision. I want to actually go, okay, great. Susie's on the chopping block because of this, this, and this. Okay, now I know that. I'm going to start building a plan so that when I do chop her, then we're good to go. And I think you're exactly right. I don't think anybody on the team should even have to think about that perspective. That is the job of the practice owner, to think about the consequences of that and not to just react to people that you value on the team. Absolutely. And their opinion matters. I want to hear that. But the fact that they've interpreted that strategy as softness is something
and not even soft, but like a roadblock to their growth and success.
Yeah.
And why am I blocking their growth and success? And, part of me goes, I am so appreciative that they care so much about the practice. But I just feel like their heads aren't in the right place right now. Yeah. And so, again, that's my own fault for sending them to this conference and them telling them that it's me who's the roadblock. But, I guess in a way it's a good thing that this is coming out so that we can openly and honestly have these conversations. Because I just bunted it back to them then. And I said, okay, well, if you want to get rid of these two, then we're not getting anybody else, which means then we've got to slow down our schedule. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be less productive. So I get that those two, add to the overhead, but
they serve a purpose.
But imagine the overhead without all the less production, because we've got fewer bodies helping move in pedo in, a high volume situation. And
the other thing that I would say on that you did, so you kind of showed them in a way you were showing them the consequence of that decision. So you weren't defending the person that they were putting on the chopping block. You were just saying, okay, if I go with you on this is going to be the impact. And I think that's important, because even though they don't need to think of that strategy, you do need to be able to show them that you've thought through it. Like, I've thought through the exact same thing, and I want you to know this would be the consequence of that decision.
And what's funny is to your point, we've thought about it for so long, so many times, all the time. And so now it's like, to be questioned about that, I'm just like, well, they don't have the privy, they don't know that we have all of those conversations all the time. But, so I think that's part of it. I forgot where I was going with this. Sorry.
The other thing that you mentioned that I think is important to bring up here is that you did put, at least in our conversation, I think it's important to put some of the responsibility back on them.
Thank you. That's where I was going with that. So that's what I ended up doing. I said, first of all, okay, let's assume that we get rid of these. Where am I going to find somebody else? Which, again, I towed that line. I don't like them to know that there's slim pickings, but I think everybody knows right now, if you're alive in this world, there's slim pickings in certain fields, right? So, so it's like, it's slim pickings. So we got to assume that we're not going to replace them. So think about that impact. Then think about, what was I about to say? Sorry, I still lost it again. It's been a long day.
Their responsibility.
Yes. So then I said, okay, so think about the repercussion there, because your point is to try to help with growth and overhead. And what I see is less growth because we've got less people helping to see patients and do all of that. So that's issue number one. I said, more to the point though, I was like, y'all keep saying, like, I guess that was one thing that was brought up in the class, was because they kept hitting me with, but our culture should be. I'm like, but is our culture not that? Our culture is like, you show up on time, you work hard. I go, we don't have anybody on our team right now who sits in the break room and just looks at her phone all day. We don't have somebody just going over lunch. We don't have somebody coming late. Our culture is fine. So I don't know what culture you guys are talking about. You're talking about a culture of being right, like no mistakes. That's what you're talking about? Okay, well, good luck with finding that, first of all, of any human being, myself included. But fine, if that's where you're going with that, then what are we So I don't think we have a culture problem.
Yeah.
What we've got is a ceiling problem as far as I'm concerned. And so what are you guys doing to help hold your teammates accountable? I go, because I'm exhausted. Bethany and I have had many talks, and I don't need, we do these engagement scales, and I don't need that. I need you in real time. And you got to be as hard on the ones that you like as the ones that you don't like. Because I will tell you, all five are equally,
make mistakes.
Yeah, and equally, like, not one is better than the other. It's just, again, you don't like those two. So even the one you like, I can tell you these are the 3 mistakes she made within the first 20 minutes of being on the floor. Things that should not have happened. But we all like her, and she's delicate. I don't want to, like, say it to her and make her feel bad and ruin her day and make her cry. So I just ignored it and I fixed it. Why don't you guys hold her accountable and say, hey, if you were the one on the chopping block, this is what we don't like. You've got to figure this out. What are you going to do to make sure you don't make that mistake again? Mm-hmm. What can I do to support you make sure? Do I need to make you reminders? Do I need to check your chart notes right after you've just done them? Do you need me to help sit with you and make a checklist? Like, what is your plan and strategy to help these people improve? Because I don't think we've got a wrong culture fit. If there's a wrong culture fit, we get rid of them. If you've heard our episode a couple of weeks ago, it was like how we just fired people right off within a week and 2 weeks of being there. I don't need the wrong culture fit.
Right.
But if I've got the right culture fit, which I believe we do, and I kept going, I believe we do. So I don't know what y'all are talking about here. So if that's the roadblock, that I'm not seeing the culture fit, but I don't think it's a culture fit. I think it's you want people to be smarter and have more common sense. And I don't know how to give them that.
And what are you if you're willing to complain and really even put them up to be terminated from their position, what are you going to do as the person that's complaining? What is your role in coaching that person? Because if you're spotting the mistakes and you can see them so clearly that you think this person needs to be fired, well, before we fire anybody, part of our culture of training, because I talk about that with everybody that comes on board with your team, is that this is a team where we push you to the limits, where you are going to learn things that you never thought you'd learn. So if that's our culture and you feel like somebody isn't achieving what you think they need to achieve, then what's your role, leader, in that process? Because you have a role. And if they're not achieving, part of that weight is on you. And I think, again, there are so many conversations and corrective conversations that you have had with these people that they talked to you about today. So it's not like you're sitting back and you're like, yeah, I see their mistakes, but oh gosh, they're cute. Let's just keep them on the team. That is, you are aggressively addressing issues as they pop up. But if your leaders have come in and said, hey, they need to go, then to me, those leaders need to take a stab at coaching them as well before that.
And that's what I said to them. I said, I've done everything I can. Why don't you two have a come to Jesus talk with them? Hey, because what I see them doing is they get frustrated and they go in the corner and bitch to each other about all the mistakes they just saw. How about you quit the bitch session and pull aside the employee and go, hey, we just made this mistake. We talked about it in huddle this morning. How did this happen? Mm-hmm. Tell me how I can help you not make this happen again, because that is not acceptable. Mm-hmm. That accountability piece. Can we go through that first? And then if the person digs their heels in and goes, well, I'm not going to change that. Like, this is the way I do it. Okay, now bye. Fine, because now you're not a culture fit anymore. But we're not there yet. Y'all are just bitching about everybody because they're not as common sense as you two. So when I let them go and all the work falls on you and we have less work to do because we can't accommodate that many patients, then you're going to bitch about that too. Yeah. So
not to mention that alone, kind of nods back to our last episode. That puts the practice at risk, because now we've eliminated, 2 or 3 people from the team, and we are more reliant on a few people. And that makes me nervous in this day and age, because if we're always planning on somebody to leave or somebody to have a baby or something like that, if we've reduced down to where we're slim pickings and we're really dependent upon every person, that is a risk.
Which is what I said to you, where I was like, and the nerve, both of them have said that this is going to be the next year that they're trying to have a baby. I'm like, and you want me to fire 3 of my team members and then you 2 be out on maternity at the same time? And then that's now me, like, that's the iron fist I should rule with, and putting my big girl panties on and quipping the roadblock? Are you bleeping kidding me right now? And again, to be fair to them, they don't have to view it from that perspective, but I do.
Yeah, you have to. The weight is yours. The
yes.
baby is
and
yours.
So now you're telling me I'm the roadblock. Well, You know what? You're the roadblock because you're going to go have a baby. So that's going to impact my ability to grow. Yeah. You're fired. You know what? I mean, like, so if you want that same medicine back, I guess I was just really disappointed with the conversation, I guess. I guess I expected more, and I expected more, especially after going to a course like this, that what you said to me on the phone, you're like, that's what they took away from this? Yeah. I'm like, okay, so one person said it's the doctor, but what did Deion Sanders say? It's my fault? Deion said it's Kuba's fault? Deion, did you say that, dude? Like,
I expect more from you, Deion.
I expect more from you, and you too, Tim Tebow. So I just, that was the takeaway, that they couldn't wait to come and
hit me with.
Boom.
Well, I hope this helps me to finish fleshing it out with you. I feel better personally. But also I feel like this is very common. It is common for practice owners to get complaints. So keep perspective, keep the global plan, make sure this isn't putting your practice at risk, and put the onus on that leader. Okay, you got a problem.
What's your solution?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.